Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 1. The morning sun gently rose above the distant mountains as Ethan continued his peaceful journey. Behind him, Silent Lake slowly disappeared beneath a blanket of soft morning mist. He paused at the top of the mountain trail and looked back one last time. Far below, the little wooden cabin rested quietly beside the crystal-clear lake. A thin ribbon of smoke drifted lazily from its chimney. Oliver stood near the dock with Maple faithfully at his side. Though they were now too far away to speak, Ethan smiled and raised one hand. Oliver returned the gesture. Then, with a calm heart, Ethan turned toward the path ahead. The trail slowly descended through rolling green hills. The air became warmer with every mile. The scent of pine trees gradually faded, replaced by the sweet fragrance of wild herbs and blooming flowers. Gentle birdsong filled the morning air. A narrow stone path wound between fields of tall grass that shimmered beneath the golden sunlight. Butterflies floated lazily from flower to flower. Honeybees hummed softly among the blossoms. Everything around him seemed to move with quiet grace. After several peaceful hours, Ethan noticed something unusual drifting through the breeze. A delicate floral scent unlike anything he had experienced before. It was gentle, sweet, wonderfully calming. He closed his eyes for a moment and breathed deeply. The fragrance seemed to invite him forward. Curious, he continued walking. As he reached the crest of a gentle hill, the landscape opened before him. Ethan stopped in amazement. Stretching as far as the eye could see was a sea of purple. Thousands upon thousands of lavender flowers covered the valley below. Their endless rows swayed gently beneath the afternoon breeze like soft violet waves. In the very center of the valley stood an old white windmill. Its wooden blades turned slowly with the wind, round and round, without hurry, without effort. Nearby rested a peaceful little village with stone cottages, flower gardens, and winding cobblestone streets. Thin trails of white smoke rose from a few chimneys. Children laughed softly in the distance. A small river sparkled beside the village, crossed by an old stone bridge covered with climbing roses. The entire valley looked like a painting. Peaceful, timeless, beautiful. As Ethan began walking down toward the lavender fields, the sweet fragrance became even stronger. The warm breeze carried tiny purple petals through the air. They drifted gently around him before settling softly upon the path. Somewhere nearby, a distant church bell rang. Slow, gentle, comforting, for reasons he could not explain. Ethan already felt at home. Ahead, the old windmill turned quietly beneath the blue sky, as if it had been patiently waiting for another traveler to discover its peaceful story. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 1. The morning sun gently rose above the distant mountains as Ethan continued his peaceful journey. Behind him, Silent Lake slowly disappeared beneath a blanket of soft morning mist. He paused at the top of the mountain trail and looked back one last time. Far below, the little wooden cabin rested quietly beside the crystal-clear lake. A thin ribbon of smoke drifted lazily from its chimney. Oliver stood near the dock with Maple faithfully at his side. Though they were now too far away to speak, Ethan smiled and raised one hand. Oliver returned the gesture. Then, with a calm heart, Ethan turned toward the path ahead. The trail slowly descended through rolling green hills. The air became warmer with every mile. The scent of pine trees gradually faded, replaced by the sweet fragrance of wild herbs and blooming flowers. Gentle birdsong filled the morning air. A narrow stone path wound between fields of tall grass that shimmered beneath the golden sunlight. Butterflies floated lazily from flower to flower. Honeybees hummed softly among the blossoms. Everything around him seemed to move with quiet grace. After several peaceful hours, Ethan noticed something unusual drifting through the breeze. A delicate floral scent unlike anything he had experienced before. It was gentle, sweet, wonderfully calming. He closed his eyes for a moment and breathed deeply. The fragrance seemed to invite him forward. Curious, he continued walking. As he reached the crest of a gentle hill, the landscape opened before him. Ethan stopped in amazement. Stretching as far as the eye could see was a sea of purple. Thousands upon thousands of lavender flowers covered the valley below. Their endless rows swayed gently beneath the afternoon breeze like soft violet waves. In the very center of the valley stood an old white windmill. Its wooden blades turned slowly with the wind, round and round, without hurry, without effort. Nearby rested a peaceful little village with stone cottages, flower gardens, and winding cobblestone streets. Thin trails of white smoke rose from a few chimneys. Children laughed softly in the distance. A small river sparkled beside the village, crossed by an old stone bridge covered with climbing roses. The entire valley looked like a painting. Peaceful, timeless, beautiful. As Ethan began walking down toward the lavender fields, the sweet fragrance became even stronger. The warm breeze carried tiny purple petals through the air. They drifted gently around him before settling softly upon the path. Somewhere nearby, a distant church bell rang. Slow, gentle, comforting. For reasons he could not explain, Ethan already felt at home. Ahead, the old windmill turned quietly beneath the blue sky, as if it had been patiently waiting for another traveler to discover its peaceful story. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 2. Ethan walked slowly down the winding path toward the Lavender Valley. The gentle breeze carried thousands of tiny purple petals through the air. Each step filled the atmosphere with the soothing fragrance of blooming lavender. It was a scent unlike anything he had experienced before. Soft, warm, peaceful. As he reached the first field, he gently brushed his fingertips across the tops of the flowers. The lavender swayed gracefully beneath the afternoon breeze. Wave after wave of violet blossoms rolled across the valley like a quiet ocean. Honeybees drifted peacefully from flower to flower. Their gentle humming blended perfectly with the whispering wind. Above the fields, white clouds floated lazily across the brilliant blue sky. Everything felt wonderfully calm. A narrow cobblestone path divided the endless lavender fields. Along its edges grew white daisies, tiny blue cornflowers, and bright yellow buttercups. Every few minutes, a wooden bench appeared beside the path, inviting travelers to stop and simply enjoy the view. Ethan paused at one of the benches. From there, he could see the old windmill more clearly. Its white stone walls had weathered beautifully over the years. The large wooden sails turned slowly with the steady breeze. Round and round, never rushing. Near the windmill stood a small cottage surrounded by climbing roses and lavender bushes. Its windows were open. White curtains danced gently in the breeze. A few chickens wandered peacefully through the nearby garden. The peaceful village beyond looked equally charming. Stone cottages lined the quiet streets. Flower baskets hung beneath every window. Colorful bicycles rested against wooden fences. Somewhere nearby, laughter floated softly through the air. Children were playing in the village square. As Ethan continued walking, he noticed an elderly woman kneeling beside one of the lavender fields. She carefully gathered fresh bundles of flowers into a woven basket. Her silver hair was tucked beneath a wide straw hat decorated with dried lavender. She looked up and smiled warmly. "You must be our visitor." Her voice was gentle, almost musical. Ethan smiled politely. "My name is Ethan." The woman stood slowly and brushed a few lavender petals from her apron. "I'm Clara. Welcome to Lavender Valley." She handed Ethan a small bundle of freshly cut lavender. The sweet fragrance immediately surrounded him. "In this valley," Clara said softly, "we believe every traveler should carry a little piece of peace with them." Ethan thanked her and carefully placed the lavender inside his backpack beside the keepsakes from his earlier journeys. The smooth river stones, the white seashell, the pale blue sea glass, the brass compass, the carved wooden pine cone. Now, a bundle of fragrant lavender joined the growing collection. Clara smiled. "I think someone would enjoy meeting you." She pointed toward the old windmill. "The miller still lives there. He has listened to the wind for longer than anyone else in the valley." Ethan looked toward the slowly turning sails. The old windmill stood proudly above the endless sea of purple flowers. Its peaceful rhythm seemed almost alive, round and round, as though it were quietly telling stories to the breeze. With a heart full of curiosity, Ethan followed the cobblestone path toward the old windmill, wondering what peaceful lesson the wind might share next. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 3. The cobblestone path gently climbed the small hill where the old windmill stood. With every step, Ethan could hear the slow, rhythmic creak of the great wooden sails turning in the afternoon breeze. Creak, pause, creak, pause. The sound was calm, comforting, almost like the windmill was breathing. The sweet fragrance of lavender filled the air. Tiny purple petals floated around Ethan as the warm breeze swept gently across the valley. When he reached the top of the hill, he stopped to admire the windmill. It was even more beautiful up close. Its white stone walls had softened with age. Green ivy climbed gracefully around its entrance. Colorful flower boxes beneath every window overflowed with lavender, daisies, and bright yellow sunflowers. Beside the windmill stood a small wooden sign. Its faded letters simply read, "The Old Windmill." Below it, someone had carved another line by hand. Asterisk, "The wind always knows the way home." Asterisk. Ethan smiled. The words felt peaceful. He gently pushed open the old wooden gate. It creaked softly as he entered the garden. Rows of herbs grew neatly beside the stone pathway. Fresh rosemary, mint, thyme, chamomile. Their gentle fragrance blended beautifully with the scent of lavender. Birds sang happily from the nearby apple trees. Several butterflies danced lazily among the flowers. Everything in the garden seemed carefully loved. Near the entrance to the windmill, an elderly man was repairing a small wooden birdhouse. His white beard reached almost to his chest. He wore a light brown linen shirt, dark suspenders, and a wide straw hat. A gentle smile appeared as he looked up. "You must be Ethan." Ethan looked surprised. "You know my name?" The old man chuckled softly. "Clara has never been able to keep a secret. She sent one of the village children ahead." Ethan laughed. "My name is Ethan." The old man stood and offered his hand. "I'm Benjamin. I've been taking care of this windmill for nearly 50 years. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 4. Benjamin led Ethan along a narrow stone path that curved gently behind the old windmill. The peaceful sound of the turning sails slowly faded behind them. In its place came another gentle melody, the soft whisper of the wind flowing through endless fields of lavender. Whoosh, pause, whoosh, pause. The valley seemed to breathe with every passing breeze. Tiny purple petals floated gracefully through the air before settling softly upon the grass. Maple leaves from a nearby row of trees shimmered beneath the warm afternoon sunlight. As they rounded the back of the windmill, Ethan discovered a hidden garden. It was unlike any garden he had ever seen. Circular stone paths surrounded a small fountain carved from white marble. Crystal clear water trickled gently into a round pond filled with smooth river stones. Tiny orange and white koi fish glided peacefully beneath blooming water lilies. Around the pond grew lavender, chamomile, rosemary, jasmine, and fragrant white roses. The entire garden carried a soothing perfume that made every breath feel lighter. In one corner stood a simple wooden swing hanging from the branch of an old oak tree. It moved gently with the breeze, even though no one sat upon it. Benjamin smiled. "My wife loved this garden. We planted every flower together." He gently touched one of the blooming lavender bushes. "Even after she was gone, I kept planting more. Not because I was sad, but because every flower reminded me that love never truly disappears. It simply blooms in different ways." Ethan listened quietly. The words settled softly into his heart. Beyond the garden, a narrow trail climbed a small grassy hill. At the very top stood a wooden gazebo with a wide view of the valley below. Benjamin pointed toward it. "Let's watch the evening from there." The climb was gentle. Wildflowers lined both sides of the trail. Small blue butterflies floated among the blossoms. A pair of white doves rested quietly upon a nearby fence before flying gracefully across the lavender fields. When they reached the gazebo, Ethan paused in amazement. The view stretched across the entire valley. Rows of purple lavender flowed toward the horizon like waves upon a peaceful sea. The little village rested peacefully among gardens and cobblestone streets. The old windmill turned steadily beneath the golden sky. Far beyond the fields, gentle hills rolled into the distance beneath soft white clouds. Benjamin poured 2 cups of warm lavender tea from a small thermos he had carried in his satchel. Steam rose gently into the cool breeze. The tea carried a delicate floral aroma that blended perfectly with the surrounding fields. Ethan took a slow sip. The warm drink tasted gentle and comforting, almost like the valley itself. For several peaceful minutes, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the wind move through the lavender. The flowers swayed together, row after row, like a calm purple ocean dancing beneath the afternoon sun. Benjamin finally broke the silence. Do you know why this valley always feels so peaceful? Ethan shook his head. Benjamin smiled. Because nothing here tries to be louder than the wind. The flowers bloom quietly. The birds sing gently. The river flows without rushing. And the windmill turns at its own pace. He looked toward Ethan with kind eyes. Perhaps people find peace here, because everything here has learned to live without hurry. Just then, the distant church bell echoed gently across the valley. 1, 2, 3. Its slow, comforting sound drifted through the lavender fields as the afternoon quietly began to give way to evening. Benjamin stood and smiled. The village will soon prepare for the Lantern Festival. It's a tradition we've kept for generations. If you'd like, you can join us tonight. Ethan's eyes brightened with quiet curiosity. A peaceful village, hundreds of glowing lanterns, and another unforgettable evening awaited beneath the lavender sky. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 5. The afternoon slowly melted into evening. The golden sunlight softened, bathing the lavender valley in warm shades of amber and rose. A gentle breeze continued to ripple through the endless purple fields. From the hilltop gazebo, Ethan could see the entire village beginning to awaken in a different way. People stepped out of their stone cottages carrying small lanterns made of wood and frosted glass. Children laughed as they carefully held colorful paper lanterns shaped like stars, flowers, and tiny birds. Benjamin smiled. The Lantern Festival begins just before sunset. It reminds us that even the smallest light can brighten the quietest night. Together, they made their way down the winding path toward the village. The streets had become even more charming. Fresh lavender bouquets decorated every doorway. Flower baskets hung from old wooden balconies. The sweet scent of baked bread drifted from a nearby bakery. A little cafe had placed wooden tables outside beneath climbing roses. Villagers greeted one another with warm smiles. No one seemed hurried. Everyone moved with the same gentle rhythm as the turning windmill. As Ethan crossed the old stone bridge, he paused to admire the small river below. The water flowed slowly over smooth stones. Tiny fish darted beneath the clear surface. Wild ducks glided peacefully downstream. The river reflected the soft colors of the evening sky. Nearby, a young girl was placing floating candles into small wooden boats. She looked up and smiled. They'll carry our wishes along the river. Ethan watched as the little boats drifted gently with the current. Their tiny flames shimmered like golden stars upon the water. Benjamin explained softly. Every year, each family lights a lantern, not to wish for something new, but to give thanks for the quiet blessings they already have. Those words stayed with Ethan as they entered the village square. At its center stood a magnificent old oak tree. Its wide branches were decorated with hundreds of glowing lanterns. Golden lights swayed gently in the evening breeze. The entire square glowed with warmth. Musicians sat beneath the tree, playing soft melodies on violins, acoustic guitars, and a gentle wooden flute. The music floated peacefully through the air. Slow, gentle, comforting. Children danced quietly beneath the lanterns while older couples sat together on wooden benches, sipping warm lavender tea. The atmosphere felt joyful without ever becoming noisy. Benjamin handed Ethan a small handcrafted lantern. Its frosted glass was decorated with tiny painted lavender flowers. "Every guest lights one," he said. Ethan carefully lit the candle inside. The small flame flickered gently before glowing with a steady, peaceful light. As darkness slowly settled over the valley, hundreds of lanterns illuminated the village. Golden reflections danced across the cobblestone streets. The little river sparkled beneath the stone bridge. Even the old windmill seemed to glow beneath the warm evening light. Ethan looked around in quiet wonder. He had visited peaceful rivers, a lonely lighthouse, a silent mountain lake. But this village offered something different. It reminded him that peace could also be shared, not only in silence, but in simple moments spent together. Benjamin smiled as he watched the glowing lanterns. "Tonight," he said softly, "the valley will become even more beautiful. After the moon rises, we'll climb to the hill above the windmill. From there, you'll see a sight that very few travelers ever forget." Ethan looked toward the darkening sky. The first evening stars were already beginning to appear. Another peaceful memory was quietly waiting to unfold. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 6. As twilight settled over Lavender Valley, the village became a sea of warm golden lights. Hundreds of lanterns glowed softly along the cobblestone streets. Their gentle light reflected in every cottage window, every flower basket, and every quiet corner of the peaceful square. The sky above slowly transformed. The last shades of orange faded into soft violet, then deep blue. One by one, the evening stars began to appear. Benjamin looked toward the old windmill. "It's time." He picked up his lantern and led Ethan through a narrow path that climbed the hill behind the village. The path was lined with rows of blooming lavender. Even in the fading light, the flowers released their calming fragrance into the cool evening air. The breeze carried the scent gently across the hillside. Whoosh, pause, whoosh, pause. Small lanterns had been placed along the trail. Their warm glow guided visitors without disturbing the peaceful darkness. Crickets began their gentle evening song. Far away, an owl called softly from a grove of old oak trees. The sounds blended perfectly with the whispering wind. Halfway up the hill, Ethan looked back. The village below looked magical. Every lantern shimmered like a tiny golden star resting upon the earth. The old windmill stood proudly above the cottages. Its great wooden sails continued turning slowly beneath the evening sky. Round, pause, round, pause. Benjamin smiled. No matter the season, the windmill never stops listening to the wind. They continued climbing until they reached the highest point of the hill. There stood a wide stone terrace overlooking the entire valley. Several wooden benches faced the breathtaking view. A few villagers were already sitting quietly, wrapped in warm blankets and sipping cups of lavender tea. No one spoke loudly. Everyone simply watched the night arrive. Ethan sat beside Benjamin. A gentle silence surrounded them. Slowly, the full moon rose above the distant hills. Its silver light spilled across the endless lavender fields. The purple flowers shimmered softly beneath the moonlight, creating waves of silver and violet stretching to the horizon. The little river reflected the moon like a ribbon of polished glass. The rooftops of the village glowed beneath the lanterns. Even the white walls of the old windmill seemed to shine beneath the peaceful night. Ethan had never seen a place so calm. Benjamin quietly reached into his coat pocket and removed a small wooden music box. Its surface was carved with tiny lavender flowers and delicate windmill sails. He gently turned the little key. A soft melody filled the quiet night. The tune was slow, gentle, almost like a lullaby carried by the wind. As the music played, the villagers smiled peacefully. Some closed their eyes. Others simply watched the moonlight dance across the fields. Benjamin whispered, "My grandmother played this melody every lantern festival. She believed peaceful music helped people remember the happiest moments of their lives." Ethan listened carefully. The melody stirred memories of his own journey. The whispering river, the lonely lighthouse, the silent mountain lake, and now, the endless lavender valley. Each place had left a quiet gift inside his heart. When the melody ended, no one applauded. The silence that followed felt even more beautiful. Benjamin looked up at the stars. Sometimes, the most meaningful moments are the ones that end without anyone wanting them to. Ethan nodded. The cool night breeze carried another wave of lavender fragrance across the hill. Above them, countless stars sparkled in the clear sky. Below them, the lanterns continued glowing peacefully throughout the sleeping valley. And in that quiet moment, Ethan realized that this beautiful place was not asking him to remember it. It was gently teaching him how to remember peace itself. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 7. The peaceful melody of the little music box slowly faded into the cool night air. For a few quiet moments, no one moved. No one spoke. The valley itself seemed to be listening. Above, thousands of stars sparkled across the velvet sky. The full moon climbed higher, bathing the endless lavender fields in soft silver light. Each flower reflected a gentle glow, making the valley appear like a vast purple ocean beneath the stars. A cool breeze drifted over the hill. It carried the soothing fragrance of lavender mixed with the fresh scent of evening grass. Ethan closed his eyes and breathed deeply. Every breath seemed to wash away another layer of worry. Benjamin stood and smiled gently. "There is one more place I'd like you to see. It is my favorite place in the entire valley." They left the stone terrace and followed a narrow footpath that wound behind the windmill. Small lanterns hanging from wooden posts lit the way. Their warm golden light danced softly with every passing breeze. The path led through rows of ancient olive trees. Their twisted trunks told stories of many generations. Beyond the trees, Ethan heard the gentle sound of flowing water. Soon, they arrived at a small stream that crossed the valley. A graceful wooden footbridge arched over the crystal clear water. Tiny lanterns floated along the stream, their reflections shimmering beneath the moonlight. Benjamin rested his hand upon the smooth wooden railing. "My father built this bridge. He believed every peaceful journey deserves a quiet crossing." Ethan looked into the stream below. The water flowed gently over smooth white stones. Tiny fish drifted lazily beneath the surface. The moon reflected perfectly upon the water, broken only by the soft ripple of the current. Nearby, tall willow trees stretched their long branches toward the stream. The leaves swayed gently, whispering in the evening breeze. Whoosh, pause, whoosh. Pause. Benjamin smiled. When I was a little boy, I would come here whenever I felt confused. I would sit on this bridge and simply listen. Ethan asked softly, "What did you hear?" Benjamin chuckled. At first, only the water. But after many visits, I began hearing something else. The quiet answers that only appear when your mind becomes still. Ethan remained silent. He understood. During his journey, every peaceful place had taught him the same lesson in a different way. Sometimes, the world speaks most clearly when everything else becomes quiet. Benjamin reached into a small basket he had been carrying. Inside were 2 warm lavender biscuits wrapped in linen cloth. He handed one to Ethan. Freshly baked, soft, lightly sweet, with a delicate hint of honey and lavender. They enjoyed the simple treat while sitting together on the wooden bridge. Above them, fireflies began appearing among the willow branches. One tiny light, then another. Soon dozens of glowing fireflies floated through the darkness. Their soft golden lights drifted slowly above the stream like tiny wandering stars. Ethan watched them with quiet wonder. The entire valley seemed filled with gentle light. The moon above, the lanterns below, the fireflies among the trees, and the peaceful glow from the distant village. Benjamin looked toward the old windmill, still turning slowly beneath the moon. It has watched over this valley for more than a century. It reminds us that life doesn't need to move quickly to move forward. Ethan smiled. He gently touched the small bundle of lavender inside his backpack. Alongside every keepsake from his journey, it had already become another precious memory. The cool night breeze continued to drift through the valley. The stream whispered softly beneath the bridge, and somewhere beyond the lavender fields, a nightingale began singing its gentle evening song. The peaceful night was far from over. One final surprise still waited, hidden within the quiet heart of Lavender Valley. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 8. The nightingale's gentle song floated through the peaceful valley. Its delicate melody blended beautifully with the soft murmur of the stream and the whispering willow trees. Ethan remained seated on the wooden bridge beside Benjamin. Neither of them wished to hurry. The night itself seemed to move slowly. Above them, the moon shone brightly in a sky filled with countless stars. The Milky Way stretched from one horizon to the other like a river of silver light. The cool evening breeze carried another wave of lavender fragrance across the valley. It was calming, comforting, almost dreamlike. Benjamin stood quietly. "Come with me. There's one last place before we return to the village." They followed a narrow path that wound beside the stream. Fireflies danced around them, their tiny golden lights rising and falling among the tall grasses. Every few steps, smooth white stones lined the edge of the path. Wild jasmine climbed over small wooden fences. Its sweet scent mingled gently with the lavender carried by the wind. After a short walk, they arrived at a quiet meadow surrounded by ancient oak trees. In the center stood a magnificent circle of lavender bushes. Within the circle rested a single white wooden bench. There were no lanterns, no buildings, only moonlight. The silver glow illuminated every flower and every blade of grass. Benjamin smiled softly. The villagers call this the Garden of Quiet Dreams. It has been here for generations. People come here when they need to rest their hearts. Ethan slowly sat upon the bench. The meadow was completely peaceful. The only sounds were the gentle breeze, the distant stream, and the occasional chirping of crickets hidden among the grass. Benjamin remained standing. "When I was young," he said quietly, "I believed peace was something I had to find." He looked toward the moon. But as I grew older, I realized peace was always there. I simply had to become quiet enough to notice it. Ethan closed his eyes. He listened. The wind, the flowers, the night, his own breathing. For the first time in many days, there were no racing thoughts, only stillness, only calm. A shooting star suddenly crossed the night sky. Its brilliant trail disappeared beyond the distant hills. Benjamin smiled. The valley offers little gifts to those who slow down. Ethan opened his eyes. The meadow looked even more magical beneath the moonlight. Tiny dewdrops had formed upon the lavender flowers. They sparkled like thousands of tiny diamonds. Nearby, a small family of rabbits quietly emerged from beneath the bushes. They nibbled peacefully on the fresh grass before disappearing once again into the shadows. Nothing in the valley seemed afraid. Everything belonged. Everything trusted the quiet rhythm of the night. Benjamin gently placed a small linen pouch into Ethan's hand. Inside were dried lavender flowers gathered from the oldest field in the valley. "When you return home," he whispered, "place these beside your bed, and whenever their fragrance reaches you, remember this night. Remember that even the busiest heart can become peaceful again." Ethan carefully placed the little pouch inside his backpack with the keepsakes from his journey. The river stones, the seashell, the sea glass, the brass compass, the carved pine cone, and now, the dried lavender from the garden of quiet dreams. The moon climbed a little higher. The meadow glowed with soft silver light. Benjamin looked toward the distant village. The evening is growing late. Tomorrow, I'll show you the oldest lavender field in the valley. It blooms differently from all the others. Together, they began walking back along the moonlit path. Behind them, the garden of quiet dreams remained silent beneath the stars, waiting patiently for another traveler who needed a peaceful place to rest. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 9. The moon remained high above Lavender Valley as Ethan and Benjamin quietly walked back toward the village. The narrow stone path shimmered beneath the silver moonlight. Around them, the lavender fields swayed gently with the cool night breeze. The sweet fragrance lingered in the air, making every breath feel calm and refreshing. Whoosh, pause, whoosh, pause. The only other sounds came from the distant stream and the occasional song of a night bird hidden among the trees. As they approached the old windmill, its great wooden sails continued their slow, graceful rhythm. Round, pause, round, pause. Even at night, the windmill never seemed to sleep. Benjamin smiled. "My father used to say, the wind keeps turning because tomorrow is always coming." Ethan looked up at the towering windmill. Its white stone walls glowed softly beneath the moonlight. It stood like a quiet guardian watching over the valley. Soon they reached Benjamin's little cottage beside the windmill. Warm golden light spilled gently from the windows. The comforting aroma of freshly baked bread drifted through the cool evening air. Benjamin opened the wooden door. Inside, the cottage felt wonderfully cozy. A small fireplace glowed warmly in the corner. Shelves filled with old books lined the walls. Bundles of dried lavender hung from wooden beams across the ceiling. Their soothing fragrance filled every room. Near the window stood an old rocking chair. Beside it rested a wooden table with a small oil lamp and a worn leather journal. Benjamin carefully placed a cast-iron kettle over the fire. Soon, the gentle sound of simmering herbal tea filled the quiet room. Steam rose slowly into the warm air. He poured 2 cups of fresh lavender and chamomile tea. The delicate aroma spread throughout the cottage. Ethan wrapped both hands around the warm cup. Its gentle heat felt comforting after the cool evening outside. Benjamin sat quietly in the rocking chair. For a few peaceful moments, only the crackling fire could be heard. Crackle, pause, crackle, pause. Benjamin finally reached for the old leather journal. The edges of its pages had turned golden with age. He opened it carefully. Inside were hand-drawn sketches of the valley, the windmill, the village, the little stream, the ancient oak trees. Every page held memories collected over many decades. Benjamin smiled softly. My grandfather began this journal. My father continued it. And now, I've added my own memories. He gently turned another page. It showed a watercolor painting of the lavender fields beneath a full moon. Below the painting, a simple sentence had been written in elegant handwriting. Asterisk, the quietest places often leave the deepest footprints upon the heart. Asterisk. Ethan read the words slowly. They reminded him of every place he had visited during his journey. Each peaceful destination had quietly changed him, not through grand adventures, but through gentle moments of stillness. Benjamin carefully closed the journal. One day, perhaps you'll begin your own, not to remember where you've traveled, but to remember how each place made your heart feel. Ethan smiled. He thought about the notebook tucked safely inside his backpack. It already held pressed flowers, small keepsakes, and quiet memories from every stop along the way. Outside, the wind continued turning the old sails. The moonlight bathed the lavender fields in silver. Inside, the fire glowed warmly as the cottage settled into peaceful silence. Tomorrow would bring another beautiful morning, and Benjamin had promised to reveal the oldest lavender field in the entire valley, a place where history, fragrance, and quiet beauty had blossomed together for generations. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 10. The first rays of dawn gently touched the rooftops of Lavender Valley. A soft golden light spread across the hills, slowly awakening the peaceful landscape. The old windmill welcomed the new day with its familiar rhythm. Creak, pause, creak, pause. Ethan opened the cottage window. A cool morning breeze drifted inside, carrying the fresh fragrance of lavender mixed with dew-covered grass. Outside, tiny birds greeted the sunrise with cheerful songs. The valley was waking gently. Benjamin was already outside, carefully watering the flowers that surrounded the cottage. He smiled as Ethan stepped into the garden. Good morning. I hope the valley gave you peaceful dreams. Ethan smiled warmly. It truly did. Benjamin handed him a small basket lined with soft linen cloth. Today we'll visit the oldest lavender field. But first, we'll gather fresh bread for breakfast. Together, they walked toward the village bakery. The narrow streets were still quiet. Only a few villagers had begun their morning routines. An elderly man swept the cobblestone path in front of his cottage. A young woman arranged colorful flowers beneath her windows. Children waved politely as they carried small baskets to the village market. The bakery stood near the little stone bridge. Warm light glowed through its windows. The delicious aroma of freshly baked bread filled the cool morning air. Inside, rows of golden loaves rested upon wooden shelves. Fresh lavender honey buns, rosemary bread, butter croissants, and soft biscuits dusted with sugar. The baker, a cheerful woman named Elena, welcomed them with a kind smile. "Good morning, Benjamin. And you must be Ethan. I've heard you've been enjoying our peaceful valley." She handed Ethan a warm lavender honey bun. Every traveler should taste one before leaving. The soft bread melted in his mouth. The delicate sweetness of honey blended perfectly with the gentle floral flavor of lavender. It tasted comforting, simple, memorable. After thanking Elena, they continued walking beyond the village. The path gradually climbed another gentle hill. Morning mist floated above the fields like thin white ribbons. Tiny drops of dew sparkled upon every lavender blossom. The rising sun turned each droplet into a tiny diamond. Soon they reached a weathered wooden gate. Above it hung a small carved sign. "The first field." Benjamin gently pushed the gate open. Inside stretched the oldest lavender field in the valley. Unlike the perfectly straight rows below, these flowers grew naturally. Some bushes were enormous. Others leaned gently beneath the weight of countless blossoms. Ancient stone walls surrounded the field. Wildflowers bloomed freely between the lavender. Butterflies drifted lazily through the morning light. Benjamin spoke almost in a whisper. "These plants are more than 100 years old. They've survived every season, every storm, every winter." Ethan gently touched one of the old lavender bushes. Its woody branches were thick and strong, yet each stem still carried beautiful purple flowers. Benjamin smiled. "They remind us that beauty doesn't disappear with age. Sometimes it becomes even more meaningful." A gentle breeze swept across the ancient field. Wave after wave of lavender moved together beneath the golden sunlight. The fragrance became even richer than anywhere else in the valley. Benjamin closed his eyes for a moment. "My grandparents planted many of these flowers. They believed every generation should leave something beautiful for the next." Ethan looked across the peaceful field. He imagined the hands that had cared for these flowers over so many decades, each generation quietly adding another chapter to the valley story. As they continued walking through the ancient rows of lavender, Ethan noticed something in the distance. Near the far end of the field stood a tiny stone chapel surrounded by white roses. Its little bell tower rose above the flowers. Morning sunlight shimmered across its stained glass windows. Benjamin smiled when he saw Ethan looking toward it. That little chapel holds one final story. A story the valley has protected for many generations. Together, they followed the narrow path through the oldest lavender field, toward the quiet chapel waiting beneath the bright morning sky. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 11, The narrow footpath wound gently through the oldest lavender field. Morning sunlight bathed the blossoms in a warm golden glow. Tiny drops of dew still rested upon the purple flowers, sparkling like countless little crystals. The gentle breeze carried their calming fragrance across the valley. Step by step, Ethan and Benjamin walked toward the small stone chapel. As they came closer, Ethan noticed how beautifully simple it was. Its walls were built from pale gray stones gathered from the nearby hills many generations ago. A climbing white rose covered one side of the chapel. Its delicate blossoms swayed softly in the breeze. Above the entrance hung a small bronze bell. It was old, weathered, yet beautifully preserved. Benjamin gently placed his hand upon the wooden door. This chapel has welcomed travelers for more than 100 years. It was never built for grand ceremonies. It was built for quiet moments. He slowly pushed the door open. The hinges creaked softly. Inside, sunlight streamed through colorful stained glass windows. Gentle beams of blue, gold, and lavender light danced across the smooth wooden floor. Simple wooden benches filled the small room. Fresh lavender bouquets rested beside every window. At the front stood a single wooden table with a small white candle burning peacefully. The flame hardly moved. Even the wind seemed to respect the silence inside. Ethan instinctively lowered his voice. The chapel felt peaceful beyond words. Benjamin smiled. When life became too noisy, my parents always came here. They never asked for answers. They simply sat in silence. He walked toward one of the stained glass windows. It showed a field of lavender beneath a bright sunrise. A white windmill stood quietly in the distance. At the bottom of the glass was a single inscription. Asterisk. Every sunrise brings another chance to begin gently. Asterisk. Ethan read the words slowly. They reminded him of every morning he had experienced since beginning his journey. Every sunrise had brought him to another peaceful place, another kind soul, another quiet lesson. Benjamin sat on one of the wooden benches. He closed his eyes for a few moments. Ethan did the same. The silence inside the chapel felt warm rather than empty. Outside, birds sang softly among the rose bushes. The distant windmill continued its slow rhythm. Creak, pause, creak, pause. The familiar sound drifted gently through the open window. Benjamin opened his eyes. My grandmother once told me something here. He smiled quietly. She said, never measure your life by how fast you've traveled. Measure it by how deeply you've appreciated each place you've been. Those simple words settled deeply into Ethan's heart. He realized that his journey had never really been about reaching a destination. It had been about learning to notice, to slow down, to listen, to breathe, to appreciate. Benjamin stood and lit one more candle beside the first. The second candle, he said softly, is always for the next traveler, so that when they arrive, they'll know someone wished them peace before they even opened the door. Ethan smiled warmly. It was one of the kindest traditions he had ever seen. Before leaving, he gently rang the little bronze bell beside the doorway. Its clear tone floated softly across the lavender fields. Dong, pause, dong. The peaceful sound echoed through the valley before slowly disappearing into the morning breeze. Outside, the sun had climbed higher into the bright blue sky. The lavender shimmered beneath its golden light. Benjamin looked toward the distant hills and smiled. There's one last place I'd like to show you this afternoon. It's where the valley says goodbye to the sun every evening. They call it Sunset Hill. Ethan looked toward the rolling hills beyond the fields. Another peaceful memory was waiting, just beyond the horizon. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 12. The afternoon arrived quietly over Lavender Valley. The morning mist had disappeared, leaving behind a sky of brilliant blue. Warm sunlight poured across the endless lavender fields. Every blossom seemed to glow beneath the gentle light. After leaving the little stone chapel, Benjamin and Ethan followed a peaceful trail that climbed toward the western hills. The path was bordered by wildflowers, golden daisies, white chamomile, tiny blue cornflowers. Butterflies floated lazily from blossom to blossom. The air carried the comforting scent of lavender mixed with fresh grass and warm earth. As they walked, Benjamin pointed toward the distant windmill. From the hillside, its white sails looked even more graceful. Round, pause, round, pause. It has turned through every sunrise and every sunset for over a century, Benjamin said. It reminds us that every ending quietly prepares for another beginning. The trail continued through a small olive grove. Ancient trees stretched their silver-green branches toward the afternoon sun. Their twisted trunks told silent stories of countless seasons. Small wooden benches rested beneath the trees. Some villagers sat peacefully, reading books or simply enjoying the gentle breeze. No one seemed to rush. The valley moved at its own calm rhythm. Soon they reached the top of the western hill. There, a wide meadow opened before them. In the center stood a single wooden bench facing the horizon. Benjamin smiled. This is Sunset Hill. Every evening, the valley gathers here. There were no buildings, no fences, only open sky, rolling lavender fields, and the quiet promise of another beautiful sunset. Ethan sat on the bench. The view stretched for miles. The village looked tiny below. The little stream shimmered like a silver ribbon. The old windmill stood proudly among the purple fields. Beyond it, distant mountains rested beneath soft white clouds. A gentle breeze swept across the hill. It carried thousands of tiny lavender petals into the air. They floated around Ethan like delicate purple snowflakes before drifting softly onto the grass. Benjamin reached into his satchel and removed a small blanket. They spread it beneath an old oak tree. From another basket, he unpacked a simple afternoon picnic. Fresh bread from Elena's bakery, soft goat cheese, wildflower honey, slices of crisp apples and pears, and a small pot of warm lavender tea. Everything was simple. Everything was peaceful. As they enjoyed the quiet meal, a flock of swallows circled gracefully above the valley. Their wings caught the sunlight as they danced through the clear blue sky. Benjamin smiled. They return every spring, and every autumn, they begin another journey. Ethan watched them disappear toward the horizon. They always know where home is. Benjamin nodded. Yes, but every journey teaches them something new before they return. Those words reminded Ethan of his own travels. Every peaceful place had changed him, not all at once, but gently, like the slow turning of the windmill, like the blooming of lavender, like the quiet flow of a river. Time passed unnoticed. The afternoon sunlight slowly softened. Long shadows stretched across the lavender fields. The breeze became cooler. Villagers began arriving at Sunset Hill carrying blankets, baskets, and warm drinks. Families, friends, elderly couples, children, Everyone greeted one another with gentle smiles. No loud conversations, no hurry. They had all come for the same reason: to quietly watch the sun end another beautiful day. Benjamin looked toward the western sky. The best part is about to begin. The horizon slowly glowed with shades of gold and amber. The valley grew quieter still. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if it, too, wished to watch the coming sunset. Episode 5: The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 13. The first touch of golden light spread across the western horizon. Slowly, almost silently, the afternoon gave way to evening. Everyone on Sunset Hill remained quiet. No one wanted to interrupt the peaceful moment. The valley below seemed to glow from within. The endless lavender fields shimmered beneath the warm light, changing from rich violet to soft shades of pink and gold. The old windmill continued its gentle rhythm. Round, pause, round, pause. Its white walls reflected the colors of the setting sun. For a moment, it looked almost golden. Ethan sat comfortably beneath the old oak tree. The cool breeze brushed gently across his face. It carried the familiar fragrance of lavender through the quiet evening air. Nearby, children sat beside their parents, wrapped in light blankets. Some quietly pointed toward the sky. Others simply watched in wonder. An elderly couple held hands as they admired the sunset together. Benjamin smiled. This has been our evening tradition for generations. We don't come here to escape life. We come here to remember how beautiful life already is. Ethan looked across the peaceful valley. The little river reflected the golden sky like a ribbon of liquid light. The stone bridge glowed warmly. The cottages looked cozy beneath their flower-covered rooftops. Smoke rose gently from a few chimneys as families prepared their evening meals. Everything below seemed perfectly at peace. A small flock of white birds crossed the sky. Their graceful flight carried them slowly toward the distant hills. Benjamin watched them disappear into the fading light. My wife always loved this moment. She used to say, "A sunset isn't the end of the day. It's the sky's gentle way of saying thank you." Ethan smiled softly. Those words stayed with him. As the sun touched the horizon, the entire valley became bathed in deep shades of amber, rose, and lavender. The colors blended together so gently that it was impossible to tell where one ended and another began. Tiny insects danced above the flowers. The breeze became softer. The turning windmill slowed slightly as the evening air grew calmer. For several peaceful minutes, no one spoke. The silence itself felt like part of the celebration. Then, just as the last edge of the sun slipped behind the distant hills, the bronze bell of the little chapel rang once. Dawn. Its clear sound drifted gently across the valley. Every villager smiled. It was their quiet way of thanking another beautiful day. The first evening star appeared high above the western sky. Soon another joined it. Then another. The deep blue of night slowly replaced the glowing sunset. Small lanterns began to appear throughout the village below. Golden lights twinkled among the cottages like tiny stars resting upon the earth. Benjamin stood and offered Ethan a warm smile. One final evening remains. Tomorrow morning, your journey will continue. Ethan nodded. He already knew leaving Lavender Valley would not be easy. Yet he also knew the peaceful fragrance of lavender, The gentle turning of the old windmill, and the quiet kindness of Benjamin and the villagers would stay with him wherever he traveled. Together, they slowly walked back down the hill beneath the first stars of the evening, while behind them, Sunset Hill quietly prepared to welcome another peaceful tomorrow. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 14. The stars grew brighter as Ethan and Benjamin made their way back to the village. The cobblestone path was softly illuminated by rows of lanterns. Their warm golden light shimmered across the stones like little pools of sunshine left behind by the day. The cool evening breeze carried the familiar fragrance of lavender through the quiet streets. Every cottage glowed gently from within. Laughter drifted softly through open windows. Some families were sharing dinner. Others sat together on their porches, watching the peaceful night settle over the valley. Nothing felt hurried. Nothing felt loud. The entire village seemed to move with the same calm rhythm as the old windmill. As they passed the bakery, Elena stood outside, placing a basket of fresh bread on the windowsill to cool. She smiled warmly. "I saved something for tomorrow's traveler." She handed Ethan a small cloth bundle. Inside was a freshly baked lavender biscuit tied with a purple ribbon. "For the road," she said kindly, "so you'll always remember the taste of our valley." Ethan thanked her with a grateful smile. He carefully tucked the little bundle into his backpack beside the dried lavender flowers. A little farther along the street, they reached the old stone bridge. The stream below reflected the moonlight like polished silver. Floating lanterns still drifted peacefully with the gentle current. Their tiny flames moved slowly beneath the bridge before disappearing around the bend. Benjamin rested his hands on the wooden railing. "When I was young," he said quietly, "I believed happiness was something waiting far away." He watched the lanterns drift downstream. But life taught me something different. Happiness often arrives quietly, while we're paying attention to simple things. Ethan looked around. The lanterns, the stream, the lavender fields, the warm cottages, the peaceful faces of the villagers. He understood exactly what Benjamin meant. They continued toward the windmill. Its great wooden sails still turned gently beneath the moonlit sky. Creak, pause, creak, pause. The familiar sound had become as comforting as the valley itself. Back inside the cottage, Benjamin placed another log onto the fire. Golden flames danced softly inside the stone fireplace, the room filled with gentle warmth. He poured 2 final cups of lavender and chamomile tea. The comforting aroma floated through the cozy little home. Benjamin reached to a high shelf and carefully removed a small wooden box. Its lid was beautifully carved with tiny lavender blossoms and the outline of the old windmill. He opened it slowly. Inside rested dozens of small keepsakes: a smooth river stone, a pressed wildflower, an old compass, a feather, a tiny seashell, each carefully wrapped in linen. Ethan smiled. "It reminds me of my backpack." Benjamin laughed softly. Perhaps every traveler becomes a collector, not of expensive things, but of peaceful memories. He picked up a tiny dried lavender flower from the box. "My granddaughter gave me this years ago. I've kept it ever since. It reminds me that even the smallest gift can carry the greatest meaning." Ethan quietly reached into his own backpack. He looked at the treasures he had gathered during his journey: the smooth river stones, the white seashell, the pale blue sea glass, the little brass compass, the carved pine cone, the fresh lavender bundle, the dried flowers from the garden of quiet dreams. And now, Elena's lavender biscuit. Each item carried a story. Each story carried a lesson. Benjamin smiled as the fire crackled gently. Tomorrow morning, I have one final gift for you. It has been passed from traveler to traveler for many generations. Outside, the wind whispered through the lavender fields. The old windmill turned faithfully beneath the stars. And inside the warm cottage, the peaceful evening slowly settled into another quiet night, preparing Ethan for one last unforgettable sunrise before his journey continued. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 15. The valley rested peacefully beneath a sky filled with stars. Inside Benjamin's cottage, the fire had burned low, filling the room with a gentle orange glow. Outside, the old windmill continued its slow, faithful rhythm. Creak, pause, creak, pause. Its familiar sound blended softly with the whisper of the night breeze flowing through the lavender fields. Ethan slept deeply. His dreams were calm. He wandered once more beside the whispering river. He saw the lonely lighthouse shining across the quiet sea. The silent mountain lake reflected countless stars. And now, the endless lavender valley stretched before him, glowing beneath a silver moon. Each place felt connected. Each memory gently flowed into the next. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, a chorus of birds welcomed the new day. Golden sunlight slowly spilled across the hills. Tiny drops of dew sparkled upon every lavender blossom like thousands of tiny diamonds. Benjamin was already awake. He stood quietly beside the windmill, watching the sunrise. In his hands rested a small wooden object wrapped in soft linen. As Ethan stepped outside, the cool morning air greeted him with the familiar fragrance of lavender. The valley looked peaceful beyond words. Mist drifted gently above the distant fields. The little stream shimmered beneath the old stone bridge. Smoke rose lazily from the village chimneys as another quiet day began. Benjamin smiled warmly. "I've been waiting for you." They walked together to the hill where the windmill overlooked the valley. The morning sun painted the landscape with soft shades of gold. Every flower seemed brighter than before. Every breeze felt lighter. Benjamin carefully unfolded the linen cloth. Inside rested a beautifully carved wooden windmill. It was small enough to fit comfortably in Ethan's hand. Its tiny wooden sails could turn gently with the breeze. The craftsmanship was remarkable. Every detail had been carved with patience and care. "My grandfather carved this many years ago," Benjamin said softly. He believed every traveler should carry something that reminds them to slow down. Benjamin placed the little windmill into Ethan's hands. "It has traveled farther than I ever have. It has visited forests, mountains, quiet rivers, and peaceful shores. Now, it belongs to you." Ethan looked at the tiny windmill with gratitude. It wasn't valuable because of the wood. It was valuable because of the kindness behind it. He carefully wrapped it and placed it inside his backpack beside the other keepsakes. Benjamin then handed him one final envelope sealed with purple wax. "Don't open it until you've reached your next destination. It's simply a letter, but sometimes the right words are best read at the right time." Ethan smiled. "I promise." For a few quiet moments, they stood together watching the morning breeze turn both the great windmill above them and the tiny carved one resting safely inside Ethan's backpack. One large, one small, yet both moved by the same invisible wind. Benjamin quietly said, "Life will always keep moving, but never feel guilty for slowing down. The world often reveals its greatest beauty to those who are willing to walk gently." Ethan nodded. Those words became another peaceful lesson he knew he would carry forever. The time to leave was drawing near, yet neither of them hurried. Some goodbyes deserved to arrive as slowly as the sunrise itself. Ahead, the winding path disappeared beyond the lavender fields, leading Ethan toward another peaceful chapter of his journey. Episode 5, The Lavender Valley and the Old Windmill. Part 16, Finale. The morning sun slowly climbed above the eastern hills, bathing Lavender Valley in its gentle golden light. A soft breeze drifted through the endless rows of blooming lavender, carrying their familiar fragrance one last time. The old windmill turned peacefully. Round, pause, round, pause. Its steady rhythm had become the heartbeat of the valley. Ethan stood beside Benjamin in comfortable silence. Neither of them felt the need to speak. Some moments were too peaceful for words. Benjamin finally smiled. "I think the valley has given you everything it wished to share." Ethan nodded. "It has given me much more than beautiful memories. It has taught me how to slow down." Benjamin's eyes sparkled warmly. "Then your visit has been worthwhile." They walked together toward the edge of the village. Along the way, familiar faces appeared one by one. Clara stood beside her lavender field, gathering fresh flowers into a woven basket. She smiled and tucked a single sprig of lavender into Ethan's shirt pocket. "So you'll always carry the scent of home," she whispered. At the bakery, Elena waved from her doorway. She handed Ethan a small loaf of warm rosemary bread. "For the road," she said with a smile. Near the stone bridge, children released tiny paper boats into the stream. Each boat carried a small candle. As Ethan watched them drift away, one little boy looked up and asked, "Will you come back someday?" Ethan smiled gently. "I believe peaceful places always find a way to welcome us again." The boy grinned and waved. At last, Ethan reached the old wooden gate at the entrance to the valley. He turned for one final look. The lavender field stretched like a purple sea beneath the morning sky. The little village rested quietly among flowers and gardens. The stream sparkled in the sunlight, and high above it all, the old windmill continued turning faithfully. Benjamin raised one hand. "No matter where your journey takes you, walk gently, breathe deeply, and never forget, the wind is always patient." Ethan placed one hand over his backpack. Inside rested every treasure he had gathered. The smooth river stones from the Whispering River, the white seashell from the lonely lighthouse, the pale blue sea glass, the little brass compass, the carved pine cone from the silent mountain lake, the fragrant lavender bundle, the dried flowers from the garden of quiet dreams, the handmade lavender biscuit, and now, the tiny wooden windmill. Each one carried a memory. Each memory carried a lesson. Together, they had become far more valuable than gold. With one final smile, Ethan stepped through the gate. The winding path stretched gently toward distant rolling hills he had never seen before. As he walked, the breeze remained at his back, The scent of lavender slowly faded. Soon it was replaced by something new. The crisp fragrance of tall cedar trees, fresh mountain air, and somewhere far ahead, the faint sound of a waterfall echoing through the forest. Ethan smiled. Another peaceful place was waiting. Another quiet story was about to begin. Behind him, Lavender Valley slowly disappeared beneath the golden morning mist. But its kindness, its gentle people, its slow-turning windmill, and its lesson of living without hurry would remain with him forever. The journey was not about finding perfect places. It was about discovering peace, one quiet step at a time. Good night, dear traveler. May your dreams be gentle. May your heart remain calm. And may tomorrow lead you to another peaceful path. The end.